Hi there, John McAdams here. Thanks a lot for joining me in this video where I test out 4 different factory loads for the 6mm Creedmoor in Ballistic Gel. So first up, I shot this load from Hornady in their Precision Hunter line, 103 grain ELD-X bullet. Then I shot another load from Hornady in their Match line, 108 grain ELD Match bullet. Then I shot a load from Barnes in their Vortex long range line, 95 grain LRX bullet. And then finally shot this factory load from Berger 108 grain Elite Hunter bullet. So that's a broad spectrum of different 6mm Creedmoor factory loads from a couple different companies, very different bullets used in this test. Now, I shot all of that ammo in this test out of my Berger Sierra rifle in 6mm Creedmoor. 20-inch long barrel. I used my Banish backcountry suppressor for all of this test. Now, it is worth noting this is a thermal scope I have on this rifle now. I have since set this rifle up to hunt with, but I used a traditional scope for the actual test. As always, I measure all velocities with my Garmin chronograph. Okay, so we'll start off with the 103 grain Hornady ammo. I'll shoot that into gel. I'll do a brief analysis of how it performs, and then we'll go down the line, do the same thing with each different type of ammo. Then I'll wrap with a conclusion and compare how all of this different ammo performed. Now, due to logistical constraints, I had to shoot this stuff in 2 different locations on 2 different days. So you may notice the background where I'm actually shooting this stuff looks different. But with all that out of the way, let's get shooting. Let's take a closer look at how the ELD-X performs. Nice short neck, very wide wound cavity between 2 and 3 inches into the ballistic gel. This actually looks not dissimilar from a varmint bullet wound cavity. But unlike a varmint bullet, this bullet does penetrate quite a bit farther into the gel. You see a lot of fragmentation, pieces of lead and copper going everywhere. Right here, bullet hits the bottom of the gel block, hits the table under it, skips back up, goes into the second gel block, comes to rest there at about 23 inches of penetration. Let me pull the tape measure off, take another look at it. All right, I'll pull that bullet out, get you some more info. Okay, the 103 grain ELD-X bullet from Hornady was shooting slower than advertised. That's not surprising. Remember, I'm using a 20-inch long barrel instead of 24 inches. Not too bad of a velocity loss, though. This stuff was still moving pretty darn fast. Now, as you would expect, this ELD-X bullet had lots of fragmentation, lots of expansion when it hit the gel, but still delivered decent penetration. I hit low on the block, the bullet angled downwards, hit the table under the gel before ricocheting back up. I probably would have gotten a little better penetration with a better shot, but even with this, not bad. I was actually pretty darn impressed with the performance of this bullet in gel. A wound cavity like this would be devastating on game. Now let's see how that other load from Hornady with the 108 grain ELD Match performs. Okay, let's take a look at the ELD Match bullet in gel. Neck a little bit longer, but not bad at all. And here is our wound cavity. Looks like it's biggest between 3 and 4 inches, and it does drop down a little bit in size, but still pretty substantial out to around 9 inches. Lots of fragmentation. Bullet continues to penetrate and goes into the second gel block, comes to rest there just shy of 18 inches of penetration. So I'll pull it out, get you some more info about it. We have a slightly longer neck with this bullet. It's not excessively long though. But it made a wound cavity similar in size to the ELD-X. The ELD Match did not penetrate as well, though, and it actually barely made it into the second gel block. Interestingly, there's not quite as much fragmentation with the ELD Match and actually had a little bit better weight retention for the Match bullet compared to the ELD-X. So what's going on here? Well, the ELD-M was going much slower than the ELD-X. It is advertised going about 100 feet per second slower. Both loads were going slower than advertised out of this 20-inch long barrel, but the ELD Match took an even bigger hit to its velocity. So that probably explains why the match bullet, which is softer than the ELD-X, made an almost identically sized wound and had slightly better weight retention. Furthermore, this probably also explains why the ELD Match didn't penetrate as well. The faster ELD-X bullet shed more weight, and that meant that as it expanded, more lead fragments were ripped off the bullet as it mushroomed. The end result was a smaller, expanded diameter for the ELD-X compared to the ELD-M. That resulted in correspondingly more drag and less penetration for the ELD Match. Going the same velocity as the ELD-X, the match bullet should make a bigger wound and fragment even more. That has been my experience with other ELD-X versus ELD Match comparisons, like with the 22 and 25 Creedmoor. Now let's switch gears, see how that 95 grain Barnes LRX performed. Let's take a closer look at how the 95 grain Barnes bullet performed. Nice short neck. Here's our wound cavity. As is typical, this is a more narrow but longer wound cavity. Little bit of fragmentation. I see a couple pieces of stuff like there and there. Wound cavity shrinks down around 14 inches or so. Bullet makes it into the second gel block, comes to rest there, about 23.5 inches of penetration. I'll pull that bullet out, get you some more info. This is what I'm used to seeing with copper bullets like this. Narrower and longer wound cavities with deep penetration. This is the smallest wound we have seen so far out of everything in this gel test, but it is also the longest. The bullet did lose a couple petals, and it did have one petal kind of cocked out at a weird angle. That's why I used a range of numbers for expansion to account for both the cocked out petal and the rest of the bullet. Interestingly, penetration was very similar to the much softer ELD-X, which made a much larger wound. But the final expanded diameter was smaller for the ELD-X, though. That possibly explains part of all of this. Now let's move on to the Berger bullet. All right, let's take a closer look at how this Berger bullet performed. Very long neck, 9.5, 9.75 inch long neck. Looks like here the bullet begins to tumble and breaks apart. Now I'll show you what this bullet wound looks like from this angle, and as you can see, even though it looks very wide from the side, it's not very deep in that third dimension. And this is typical performance from what I have seen with other bullets that have tumbled in gel like that. In any case, bullet breaks apart, pieces of it kind of go everywhere into the second gel block. You see a big piece down there, big piece of the jacket up there, and then some lead fragments that continue to penetrate to about 25 inches in the gel. So I'll pull them out, get you some more info about them. I'll tell you up front, this one did not perform as well as I hoped. First, it was slow. The slowest advertised velocity of everything in this test, and it also shot the farthest below advertised too. 2646 feet per second is pretty blah for a 6mm Creedmoor. Results like this were in line with what I have observed with other slow Berger bullets too. They have very long necks, then the bullet tumbles and breaks apart. For what it's worth, this bullet did make the biggest wound out of the bunch when it did finally tumble. That would make a gigantic mess out of the vitals of an animal if that happened while the bullet traversed them. I will say I have done some other tests with higher velocity Berger bullets. They perform much closer to advertised. They start to tumble after 3 to 4 inches in the gel, not 9 or 10 inches or even more. Now, if a bullet performed exactly like this in a deer, for example, it will pencil through the vitals, not make a lot of damage to them, and then it will start to tumble kind of on its way out of the body cavity. That's not what you want. But a bullet that makes a wound like this that is 3 to 4 inches into the gel, devastating on an animal. So I'm not sure what the deal is. Perhaps these bullets in particular just don't do that well in gel because of the way they behave. Also, 2646 feet per second is a slow muzzle velocity, but this bullet was still well above its minimum recommended impact velocity when hitting the gel. So I'm not sure if I got a bad batch of bullets or if this performance is indicative of how they perform at this velocity in gel. I don't want to get down on the Bergers, make you think I'm trashing them, because I'm not. I know a lot of people use them with good results afield. And even aside from the ho-hum performance here in gel, like I said, this was also some slow ammo. Darn near 300 feet per second slower than advertised. Certainly the results would have been different out of a 24 or 26 inch long barrel where it's going a lot faster. Perhaps that just accounts for what is going on here in the gel. Leave a comment here. Let me know if you have hunted with these Berger bullets. Tell me how they perform for you. And also let me know if there is another type of Berger bullet that you think would have worked better here with the 6mm Creedmoor. All right, so to recap, 103 grain ELD-X bullet did great. Massive wound, good penetration. The Barnes had the smallest wound. I wouldn't say it's a tiny or a small wound, but certainly smaller relative to everything else. It also had good penetration. 108 grain ELD Match bullet had the least penetration, but also made a very large wound. The Berger had an extremely long neck, but it did make the widest wound when it finally broke apart, though. I would have loved to have seen that wound begin after 3 to 4 inches of penetration in gel instead of 9 to 10 inches of penetration, though. Now, I do have to give my normal disclaimer. Results in clear gel like this don't normally translate one-to-one into real-world situations on game. Bullets tend to penetrate better, but not make as large of a wound cavity in clear gel like this than a real-life animal. Animals also aren't completely homogeneous like this gel is either. So these results should be taken as a general trend. I'm not saying that if bullet X penetrates X number of inches in gel, it will penetrate exactly that far in real animals from every angle, regardless of what it hits. I'm just saying that if a bullet demonstrates wide, shallow penetration in gel, it'll probably also behave like that in an animal. The same is true for narrow, deep penetration. Likewise, if bullet A penetrates better than bullet B in gel, well, it'll probably penetrate better than bullet B in an animal, all other things being equal. So let me know your thoughts on this subject. Have you hunted with any of these bullets from the 6mm Creedmoor? Deer, antelope, elk, bear, whatever. What bullet did you use? How did it perform for you? Leave a comment. Let me know. I want to hear your feedback. Likewise, leave a comment on this video. Let me know the cartridge bullet combination you would like me to use in the next gel test I publish on YouTube. So far, I have published a bunch of other gel tests. They are all on a YouTube playlist for you to peruse. I'm open to suggestions from what else you want to see from me in the future. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you want more content along these lines, visit thebiggamehuntingblog.com/ebook. Sign up there for a free ebook on some of my favorite hunting cartridges. And I have put a link to where you can get that ebook in the video description and in the pinned comment. And finally, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and good hunting.